And welcome everybody to the final yard here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Louis Sung, and I'm joined by SJB Michael, otherwise known as Michael Quirk. We also have Manny hiding in the producer's booth if he decides he wants to come on and correct us on some things. I am welcoming him to do so as of right now. The Miami Dolphins put up more of a fight than I ever expected them to. And even though it hurts to see the season is over, that the Dolphins lost 31-34, I am also looking at it from another perspective. That it took the entire Buffalo Bills entourage in order to stave off a team throwing out their seventh round, third string rookie quarterback just to keep us from taking them down. So in many ways, this was a moral win for the Miami Dolphins. 4th and 1. Yes, I understand. And we will get into all of that. I promise you that. But before we get into all that, just want to make sure that we go ahead and mention, Manny, if you can please pull up the graphic. PrizePicks.com is our sponsor for this show. As always, it is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can pick up to 5 different players, up to 6 different players, actually, across professional sports leagues. You can go through the NBA. You can go through the NFL. You can go through the MLB, the NHL, pretty much anything you want to look at. And also, there are other options for you to choose from. You can go boxing. There's wrestling. There's pretty much everything you could choose for. Just go for the over or the under on those fantasy platforms. So if they want the over on Skylar Thompson's passing yards, which technically he did do, if you want to do the under on Devin Singletary's rushing yards, you also have the freedom to do that as well. Unfortunately, he didn't. He went over a little bit more than he was supposed to for my taste, but then nevertheless. All you have to do, just go in there, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. So if you want to get in some wins, go ahead and go to Prize Picks right now. They will give you $100 to add on to the $100 you put in. PrizePicks.com. Use that promo code 5, FIVE today. And so now I'm joined by Eric Whitekey, who is sitting in his car. You were in Buffalo, am I not mistaken, correct?
No, I was in Orlando. We went to a place to catch the game.
Okay, because I remember Ethan mentioning that you were driving to Buffalo or something. Like, really, he's going to Buffalo? That's going to be a very hostile environment.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure. I didn't know. Like, I don't know your travel plans, bro. But in any case, so this is where I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get in my piece now first because I want to make sure that we set the tone for everything. Make no mistake. The Miami Dolphins lost this game. Buffalo did not win it. I want to make that very clear right off the bat. There were many opportunities for Miami to blow this game wide open, more open than it even had any business being. Drops by Jalen Waddle in the first half, drops by Tyreek, bad throws by Skylar, offensive line woes because you literally have a guy named Lester Cotton out there at left guard, and I didn't even know who he was up until today. You have Robert Hunt, who was playing guard all year. He's out there playing right tackle. Robert Jones flipping over from the left side to the right side because I don't know why. And he was responsible for 2 false starts. And, of course, the elephant in the room, Mike McDaniel, once again, being unable to get in the play calls in a timely manner. That, more than anything, guys, is the thing that really killed us because there were many opportunities that we had, especially just now on 4th and 1. They couldn't get the ball off in time. They had to take a delay of game. It went 4th and 6, and the rest is history. You can argue that Skylar Thompson should have thrown it over the middle to Tyreek Hill. You can argue that Mike Gesicki should have caught that pass. You can make an argument that why didn't they do like some kind of weird reverse play with Jalen Waddle like they did earlier where it was effective? I don't know. It's quite frankly very exhausting to think about. But nevertheless, I want to go ahead and reiterate one more time. It took the Buffalo Bills' entire entourage to hold off the Miami Dolphins in Buffalo in the playoffs to keep them from getting beat by Skylar Thompson, a 7th round, 3rd string rookie at quarterback who could not find a wide open receiver if you paid him, which they are. And even still, they were able to make it this close. So quite frankly, aside from the fact that it hurts that the season is over and in such a painful way, I am going to go ahead and say that what I'm taking from this is that the gap between Miami and Buffalo is not nearly as wide as people would like to make it out to be. All this tells me is that if we had even Teddy Bridgewater out there instead of Skylar, we could have won this game easily. I am saying that if we had our full offensive line, we could have easily won this game. If we had even Byron Jones out there, instead of having to rely on Keon Crossan, we could have won this game. I am saying that we were a decimated football team. And even still, with all those mistakes, we were right there with them, man, the whole way through. And Mike McDaniel, he's a rookie head coach. I understand the frustration, the rage, the anger that is going on right now that is being thrown his way. He will learn. Many ways you can say that Mike McDaniel is the reason the Miami Dolphins lost this game. We would not even be here. We would not even be in a position to be here if Mike McDaniel was not the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yeah. The frustration with the time management piece is understandable. It didn't seem like the Dolphins had a snap off before 5 seconds were on the clock once all day. And you could hear Buffalo fans shouting as the plays were being snapped with the echo of the 0 on the play clock. And I understand the frustration there because I'm jumping off my sofa shouting snap the bleeping ball. But like you said, this is your third string quarterback. This isn't Tua. This isn't the guy that you are planning your franchise around. The guy who won you the games that got you into the postseason, not the exact ultimate game that was Skylar Thompson, but the majority of the games in the year. And like you said, it's a rookie head coach. So while the frustration is understandable and justified for what happened today, people get better at their jobs. It's something that you see where clock management is one of the biggest things that's an adjustment for guys going from coordinator to head coach. It's been an issue for McDaniel a lot of this year, especially with timeouts being used. You see some coaches who folks joke, hey, you can't take him with you when you go. You can't take him with you after this game. Mike McDaniel's never had that problem, but he needs to get better with clock management. He needs to get better with getting the plays in a timely manner, and he will. He will. It wasn't as big of a shit show as we saw in Denver with calling the plays and getting managing the clock this year, where they had to hire an outside consultant to come in. But it's something he will get better at. He's too smart not to. And while the loss hurts, I can't think that there are many Dolphins fans who came in, and I'm not a morale guy, but who thought that the Dolphins would give them a run, especially being down 17-0. But you look at it, you're without Brandon Jones, you're without Byron Jones, you're without Emmanuel Ogbah, you're without various starters along the offensive line, you're without Raheem Mostert, and most importantly, you're without Tua.
You're without your second string quarterback too.
Yeah, so you'd be very hard pressed to try and convince me that game with Tua going is not a Dolphins win, potentially by more than a touchdown. Raheem Mostert even playing, a couple of the offensive linemen. And we don't need to be the excuse franchise. We saw the Bills doing that ad nauseum after the game earlier this year, where they were talking about how they pulled Pinto Ron to come in and be the middle linebacker and so forth. But it is important context. When you look at what this team is building, this is a team that, hasn't made the playoffs. You can count how many times on one hand in the last 20 plus years. But you're building. You make the playoffs. You get the experience for those guys this year. Xavier Howard, the only holdover from the last time we made the postseason. You can build on that because hey, everyone in that locker room knows if Tua was playing, if a couple other guys who were playing who will be back next year, that's a completely different game. The Dolphins lost today on the road to Buffalo, but the Dolphins also showed that they've arrived. Because before this year, the Dolphins couldn't even compete with Buffalo. We all remember Week 17 a couple years ago when they just blew the absolute doors off the Dolphins with the playoffs on the line. That didn't happen this year. The Dolphins.
Learn more from your local dealer or Culligan.com.
My phone died. I apologize.
Yeah, I know, but I hear radio. We're not sponsored by whoever's making that commercial right now.
You have the Dolphins got that first win in Miami when arguably the Bills should have won that game. The Bills got the win in Buffalo when arguably the Dolphins should have gotten that game. And then we saw it here. A couple clock management issues obviously is a killer, but it's frustrating. It's disheartening, but it's also immensely encouraging when you think about the context of what this game could have been with a full complement of the Miami Dolphins, or hell, even just a partial complement, not the decimated bunch that made it there. But they gave it a run, and when it comes to next year, this experience is going to serve as very, very valuable experience, and it's going to be a whole lot different team that goes to the playoffs next year.
Eric, I want to get your thoughts in, because right now, the way that everybody is acting, we went from saying that we needed to fire Josh Boyer to saying that now we need to fire Mike McDaniel again. There's a lot of people going on, apparently other shows going on right now. Big O going off on McDummy, so says Chuck Cooper. Listen, again, I understand the frustration with Mike McDaniel. This whole clock management thing, this whole getting the play in on a timely manner, he's got to fix it. I don't know how he's going to fix it. Maybe he just needs to expedite the play calling process, because I feel like this whole 3-man team or this 2-man team or whatever it is they're doing right now, they need to get it fixed. They can't keep snapping the football with 1 second, 0 seconds left on the clock. But with that being said, I feel like it's almost a little bit unfair, because the run that we had this season on offense was a big part of just Mike McDaniel being Mike McDaniel. We cannot sit here and pretend that, because let's say you have Brian Flores out there. Yeah, the defense will probably be better, but we have the same crappy offense. Who's running the offense? That's McDaniel as a whole. Because if you're going to complain that the offense is not getting in a timely manner, then you have to understand that, okay, well, then you need to change the offensive scheme altogether, and you don't get to have this explosive offense that you were getting to enjoy for almost 9 wins of the season. You just don't. So either you take the good with the bad, or you just keep hiring and firing guys until you find somebody who's absolutely perfect. And it's never going to happen. It is never going to happen. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are not Justin Herbert and the Chargers. They are not known for blowing it in the fourth quarter like the Chargers are. The Buffalo Bills are known for putting the game away in the fourth quarter. So Jacksonville, good for them. Doug Peterson, good for him. He made it to the next round. Listen, man.
Yeah, okay. It's not going to work. I'm done.
Okay, so we're saying farewell to Eric Weideke. Apparently, he's not. His phone's not doing what he needs it to do, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and keep going here, Michael. So now we need to talk about what's going on with the team right now. Right now, they are obviously very demoralized. They are feeling like they got cheated out of a season, because there were a lot of also penalties that didn't seem to get called. I can think of one, Matt Milano right at the end there. Like, you see Skylar Thompson running out of bounds, and Milano comes in and absolutely slams him to the ground, and there's no call there. And the argument being made by the commentators, who are very obviously Buffalo Bills fans, they're saying that, oh, well, he was still in bounds, so it doesn't count. I'm sorry. If you knock out Tom Brady running out of bounds like that, not only are you getting flagged, you might even be getting ejected, to be perfectly honest with you. So
if that happened to Josh Allen, the police would have come onto the field and cuffed Jerome Baker or so forth. And how about Josh Allen absolutely instigating that fight that happened in, I believe it was the first quarter, and just absolutely nothing there. Should have been a penalty on, I believe it was Mitch Morse, who slammed Wilkins to the ground. Wilkins did nothing after that, and somehow is offsetting penalties.
It's offsetting penalties because he touched the golden boy. You're not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know. It's very frustrating, because you know that the odds are against you. Not only are the odds against you just from a talent standpoint and from a health standpoint, the odds are against you from a home field standpoint. And it's a very simple fact that the NFL wants the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. Can you imagine the Cinderella story that the Buffalo Bills rally around their teammate DeMar Hamlin and come out with a Super Bowl win? Bro, they want that so bad. You know they do. And I'm not using DeMar Hamlin as a tool or anything like that, because it would have been the same regardless, because they still want Buffalo in the playoffs, not Miami. But you weren't going to get very many calls today. You weren't. There were plenty of opportunities where you go down the field and you could have gotten a pass interference call, but you didn't. There could have been many opportunities where there could have been a holding call, an illegal contact call.
Either side all day.
yes, there was a holding call on the Dolphins on defense because Xavier Howard was holding on Stephon Diggs, but it was declined because that was the deep bomb with I think it was Kader Kohu in coverage on what's his name? Mills? I can't remember what his name is. Shakir, that's his name. Yes. So
what did you
and Mike, and here's
on 4th and 6 with Gesicki, did you? It wasn't discussed whether or not that was interference or not, but I felt like Elam was draped around him quite a bit. Was that a missed PI?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the play again to really analyze it. But quite frankly, it feels like they just weren't going to call it. And Mike and WPB, and if you want to talk about conspiracy theories, maybe here's one for you. NFL wants the Bills and not Miami because they do not want to clear Tua. That's the other thing. Think about this for a second here, Michael. We were hearing over and over again that they were trying to get through Tua through the protocol, right? They wanted him to play in this game. They really did. And they kept getting walled off. Tua wasn't allowed to do X, Y, and Z. Tua wasn't allowed to do this. Tua wasn't allowed to do that. So he doesn't play. What is your excuse? Let's hypothetically speaking, Miami wins this game. And they have to go to the next round of the playoffs in Kansas City. What excuse are you going to use this time to not clear Tua? Seriously. Like, at that point, he's been out for 3 weeks. You see him out there in the tunnel. He looks perfectly fine. We're being told, like, McDaniel's being very vague. He's usually very clear about whether Tua is going to play or not. He wasn't that way this week. He was very vague about the whole thing. They were hoping he would play. And so the fact that he didn't is like, okay, the NFL is basically saying you can't play Tua. We're not going to clear him. Okay, well, how about next week if we win? And they almost did. Could you imagine the PR nightmare that has been this season is off the charts. The DeMar Hamlin thing, Tua's concussions, the lack of care about other players. Here's another one for you. What was the safety's name who ended up absolutely wrecking Jeff Wilson earlier on? It was Ahmed who got hit with the helmet, right?
Yeah. Was that Edwards that hit Ahmed in that swing pass?
I'm not sure who it was, but somebody hit it with the helmet, and we're arguing, oh, the football protected him. Hello? Since when does that matter? It's intent I thought that you cared about. Like, it was very obvious he went for the helmet. He was using the crown of his helmet. There is no flag there. I've reached a point where I don't know what to call it, because some people say you shouldn't be complaining so much. Some people say you got beat, get over it. Okay, I'm over it. Let's talk about other stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you want us to do that, you have to understand that we have to look at everything that happened today and factor it in to what happens next year. Because now we're going to go into next year. I believe Mike McDaniel is still going to be the head coach. I don't care what anybody says about trying to aim for Sean Payton or aiming for Jim Harbaugh or any of that other stuff. We just made the playoffs. And we did not get blown out in this game. We did not get blown out. Let's do this, Mike. How about this? You are Stephen Ross, and I am coming to you, and I'm going to do my interview at the end of the season. What am I about to tell you? Am I going to tell you we lost in the playoffs? That happens all the time. What I'm going to tell you is that, yes, I admit that I had some issues. Yes, I admit that my clock management needs work, and I'm going to work on it. However, we just went to the wild card round with a seventh round rookie, a third string rookie, and half the team on crutches. And we still were able to put up a 31-34 box score against the practically full strength Buffalo Bills. You want to say that Josh Allen's injured? Okay, fine. But he was there. And that makes a big difference. And he was still lighting up the defense. So with that being said, why does anybody feel like Mike McDaniel's in danger? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it makes even less sense to me, and it would be even more of a shock if they fired him than it was when Brian Flores was fired. Because even back then, I thought Brian Flores was safe, and he got fired. For this, after 1 year, and this is the most explosive Dolphins offense we have seen in, a decade? At least? There's no way McDaniel's leaving. No way.
Yeah, it's maybe just a certain former Miami Herald reporter who stirred that up. Even though, as you're saying, it's an asinine thought. You give a rookie head coach his first year, he makes the playoffs, he gives a good run to the overwhelming favorite to win the Super Bowl coming into the year, and I'll have to check the odds and what they are coming into the postseason. But anyone with a brain can understand, hey, things probably would have gone different if you don't have Tua knocked out, if you don't have some of the injuries that you have. So Mike McDaniel, anyone who thinks that there's a chance in hell he gets fired, even with the whole Michigan man thing and Harbaugh, and even with Sean Payton, the dalliance that we saw last year with that, it's just forget that. That's not going to happen. One thing I do want to talk about with Tua is not only was Tua robbed of a lot of this year from some fluky hits to the head and whiplash and so forth, Tua is robbed of the narrative that should be pushed all offseason about him, which was going to be, oh, he's not that check down guy with no arm strength, is he? No, he proved everyone wrong. But now the only thing that's going to be discussed about Tua is he is the only guy that's talked about as he should retire. He's the only one that it seems that a lot of talking heads on TV care about. He should really think about his future. I haven't heard that about Kenny Pickett. I haven't heard that about Mitch Morse and Spencer Brown, and the list goes on and on about these guys. And that's exactly.
Was there not a dude in this game that just this game? That's the offensive lineman, right? That you were talking about. That he whacked, he wobbled a little bit.
That was Deion Hawkins. That's a different offensive lineman.
Yeah, he went out for like one play. He was all like, oh, and nobody said a word. Nothing. No. That's like Teddy Bridgewater did less, and he got pulled for the whole game. So
imagine what that would have been if the Dolphins win this game going into next week. No one was going to be talking about, hey, what's Tua going to be able to do back at the helm of that offense? Instead, it was going to be, I don't know, did they rush him back? Even though the Dolphins have been remarkably cautious with Tua and working him through the protocol. And you've heard Mike McDaniel continuously talk about, we're not even talking about football. We're not talking about the game. We're making sure that he's not stressed, that he can get to each part of the protocol. But if the Dolphins would have won this game, you're right. The NFL doesn't want to throw Skylar Thompson on another playoff game. That's the reason that we had all these rules about protecting the quarterback is when Tom Brady got hurt in week 1 and the NFL said, oh God, we can't go through a year of people having to watch the Matt Castles of the world. So you don't want to see Skylar Thompson next week. But then, even though, it's the idiom is said of all press is good press, that's not always the case with the NFL. The NFL did not like the way everything was covered with Damar Hamlin and so forth. And it is a scary situation. It is what happens in the NFL. It's a violent game, and that was a terrifying moment for all of us. But what was going to be peppered throughout the media all week if Tua was given a chance. It was going to be, you know what? He has to think about life after football. The Dolphins are rushing him back to go try and play against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. This is sick. I am disgusted by this. And the NFL doesn't have to worry about that now as the Buffalo Bills are moving on.
Yeah, they've got their superstars. Josh Allen's in the playoffs. Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. They've got Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, America's team, in the playoffs. Tom Brady's in the playoffs. All the big, important people are in the playoffs. So, next question I have for you, Michael, is I want to ask you real quick. With the way that the defense kept Miami in the game, because let's be real about something. It was the defense that really came up big for Miami, bizarrely enough. Do you have Josh Boyer, bizarrely enough, in this game, saving his job with the performance that he had in the playoffs this week?
No. And he was getting ripped apart on Twitter. I don't know if you saw the tweets from Darius Slay and Richard.
I was part of it. Yes, I was part of that whole entourage. Yeah, I was pissed off at Josh Boyer.
It's asinine. Just because Josh Allen, who is very turnover prone, makes a throw that Xavier Howard makes a great play on the ball. Javon Holland was in the right place, right time. He broke right when that pass was thrown. couple fumbles. That's all well and good. But there was also a lot of plays where guys weren't in the right spots, where Josh Allen had lanes. Sometimes he took them, sometimes he didn't. And we can't ignore what we saw the rest of this year. And so Boyer, to me, if you want to talk about someone who can, or in this case, maybe should be gone, that's your guy right there. McDaniel gave him the old college try coming in, saying, okay, you can keep that side of the ball, kept him on. But as I mentioned in the pre-show, when you're a coach who comes in from being a coordinator, you're not a John Harbaugh special teams guy, but you come in from offense or defense, whatever it is, you see a lot of, okay, offense is still my side of the house. Even though I'm the head coach, this is still my side of the house. You saw that with Vic Fangio in Denver. Completely ignored the offensive side of the ball, and it burned them.
Brian Flores did the same thing, Michael. We watched it in person.
Punted on offensive coordinators. Just no real thought given to what he was going to do on that side of the ball. So if you're McDaniel, a step that you need to make in addition to some of the in-game things such as time management is becoming more of a CEO. Yes, obviously still have your hand all over the offense. That's what made you a great offensive coach. But also you need to step up and upgrade on that defensive side of the ball. Find someone who can put guys in the right positions, use guys correctly. We saw Jerome Baker be misused all year long, asked to do 100 things. You can't have that again. You have a lot of great personnel there. I mean, of course, I know there were a lot of injuries there, and part of that hurt the ability to run the defense that he wants to run. But you don't have Byron Jones. You don't have him. You don't have Nick Needham. So stop running that defense. Adjust. If you have a defensive coordinator who can't adjust to his personnel and is that hard-headed to keep doing the same thing over and over again, banging his head into the wall, what are we doing? So there were some great moments in this game from the defense, and you have to give Boyer a lot of credit for that, even if a lot of that was predicated upon tremendous game-breaking plays made by your game breakers. I still don't think that you can bring that guy back. You just can't.
I also wouldn't do it either. My only real concern at this point is Mike McDaniel going to be able to get somebody who is a clear improvement? Because my biggest fear, and this is a fear that I have, is that Josh Boyer gets fired and somehow it ends up being an internal hiring. Something to keep in mind. I believe Vic Fangio, like Mike McDaniel, wanted Fangio to be the defensive coordinator last season. He ended up being a defensive consultant for the Philadelphia Eagles. Manny, is that right? I know that I think you would know something like that. Yeah. So he's giving me the thumbs up in the background. Yes. So that's where Vic Fangio's been hanging out all this time. I remember reading an article that was posted a few months ago that Fangio would consider coming back as a defensive coordinator under the right circumstances. And with that being said, Mike McDaniel knows Fangio. He's worked with Fangio in the past. It would be an excellent fit, and Fangio is known as one of the great defensive minds in the NFL. I would love to have him as a defensive coordinator. I don't know if we're going to get him. Some people are saying Brandon Staley because they're figuring they're going to get fired from the Chargers.
And he should.
And he should. After what he did. See, that's the thing. We're talking about Mike McDaniel. He's not the only head coach out there who has issues, guys. He's really not. And again, if you told me that Mike McDaniel had his key players all ready to go and they still lost, I would be a lot more upset. If Tua were in this game and they still lost the way they lost and they still performed on offense, I would really be mad at Mike McDaniel. As it is right now, I'm only mildly frustrated because I know what the issue is with him. I know he has to work on it, but given all the circumstances, I can't bring myself to be like he deserves to be punished for what happened today. I just can't. I can't do it. And he needs to fix this. There is no excuse really for 4th and 1, and you still can't get the play call in. Either run a QB sneak or run it in. It's not difficult. It's really not. And he deserves to be held accountable for it. But to act like he's suddenly this joke of a head coach, I can't bring myself to be that. I can't bring myself to get there. I can't.
Yeah, it's asinine. It's so many people want your head coach, and I think his personality plays a bit into it. A lot of people did not like him still joking in the press conferences during the losing streak, but that's just who the guy is. If you want a Dan Campbell hard ass, we've already been through Dan Campbell. Let me throw a name at you as far as defensive coordinators go. He turned down the Packers last year, was an interim coach this year. A lot of rumors about him going to Alabama, but Jim Leonard. Jim Leonard's going to get some interest in NFL circles. If Alabama doesn't pick him up already, would you take Jim Leonard?
I don't know much about Jim Leonard. I would have to look him up, get his resume, kind of figure out what kind of a defense that he runs. I would need to look at what he does. If you can throw me some references, I'll look into it. But there was one guy, I believe he's in Denver, and he has the same thing as Mike McDaniel. He has like I think it starts with an E, both of his initials. I can't remember his name. Ejiro or something like that. What is it? Broncos coach Ejiro or something like that. Ejiro Avero. That's his name. He was the guy that if they clean up house, he is the defensive coordinator for the Broncos. Supposedly, since now the Hackett has been fired, if the Broncos decide to clean house, Alfredo Arteaga on 3 yards per carry straight up said, that's the guy you need. That's the perfect fit for what this team can do. So I'm very interested in what that could be like. I have to take a look at what Denver's defense looked like. I know their offense was putrid, and Russell Wilson is off a cliff. But I see people in the background saying that Boyer did his job. My problem with Josh Boyer, this is what I was saying. Did he coach his way back into keeping his job? The problem with that is, again, that whole scheme is predicated on players making plays. And if they don't make that play, for whatever reason, the defense fails. Today was the day that they finally got to do it on an individual level. And you had Zach Sealer scooping up fumbles for touchdowns. You had Xavier Howard finally getting under some passes and picking them off for once. You had Javon Holland being in position to do tip drills thanks to Kader Kohu. And again, Kader Kohu, listen, credit to this kid, okay? He is going to be really something special, I think, but he just needs more development time. So, again, how much of that is just Josh Boyer and how much of that is just players making plays? Because that's what that whole scheme is predicated on. Isn't that what you said? Isn't that what you said Richard Sherman said with his tweet? That it's a very player-focused defense. Basically, it demands that the players be perfect in order for the defense to function.
Yeah, and it's a defense that was bottom 10 in the league in points allowed per game. One of the, I believe, 5 worst pass defenses in the NFL, and that's what everyone's harping on, is that you base this whole defense around guys who could be put on an island out there in man. And that's who Xavier Howard used to be. I mean,
He's injured though, man. I'm willing. Like, let me throw this at you. Teron Armstead played this whole season with a bum everything. He was out some games. He was, but we are learning that he should have been out since week 1, and he refused the surgery because he did not want to be out for the whole season. And he went out there, man. And the list of injuries that he had on the report is a mile long, and he still came out here and decided to play. And even though he was obviously not at his best, he was still darn solid, man. Like, even though he couldn't drive his men into the ground, he was still holding his own. And for somebody who is that hurt, his toe, his hip, his pec, his arm, his knee, everything. Like,
was it week 15 that he had 4 different injuries listed on the injury report in the midweek? Mm-hmm. That we saw, and it said that he didn't practice that day, and it said hip, pec, knee. I think it was 2 different things.
He's banged up, man, and he is going to go home today and be like, he's upset that he lost, but part of him is going to be like, just be like, thank God that's over because I can't even move anymore. So, but again, these guys are all bruised up. We did not have a full entourage. And for us to go here and sit and say that's why I say I put more on Boyer, because Boyer refused to adapt at all, anything. He kept doing cover zero blitzes. He kept leaving guys on islands. Keon Crossan has no business covering anybody one-on-one. Nobody. He's a special teams ace. That was what he was brought in to do. His job was not supposed to be the number 2 corner or the number 3 corner or even the number 4 corner. He was supposed to be a special teams ace. And if it got to the point where maybe 1 or 2 games you needed him to come in for a few plays, fine. He was not supposed to be your everyday cornerback. And honestly, neither was Kader Kohu. That was a happy surprise. So, and I'm going to address this real quick. I'll let you address it if you want, because somebody's asking, does McDaniel get some blame with the defense? He is the head coach and can tell Boyer yes or no to certain things.
Yeah, that was something that we also talked about in the pregame as well, and that I was alluding to a bit, is you have to have more of a CEO approach and have your say on everything in the building. That you're not just looking after the offense anymore. And so, yeah, McDaniel should have stepped in for that. And McDaniel does deserve some of the blame for that. And so you either have a come to Jesus meeting with Josh Boyer, or you have to move on from Josh Boyer. And I unfortunately think it has to be the latter.
So, yeah, Mike, listen, if you want to argue that Mike McDaniel has spent less time being a head coach than he did being an offensive coordinator, okay, fine. You can make that argument. But I would also argue that I remember that we were upset with Brian Flores because it seemed like he was micromanaging everything, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now we are upset at Mike McDaniel for not micromanaging everything. See, that's the problem. Trying to have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So what sort of a balance would you strike to make it so that you don't micromanage, but you do step in and make sure that other things get done? Like what would you tell Boyer to do? Do not under any circumstances blitz. By doing that, you're basically taking the game out of his hands anyway. So you're basically like, if anything, you could try to come into Boyer's office and say, listen, all that blitzing that you're doing, stop doing it. Come up with a different scheme. Maybe he should have done that. You can make that argument. But I don't want Mike McDaniel keeping an eye on every single thing. That's not the way that head coaching works anymore. Guys like John Harbaugh can do that because his specialty was special teams. Like, he can do a little bit of everything, but he has coordinators in place who he trusts to get the job done, for better or worse. If we're going to sit here and say that Josh Boyer needs to be told what to do every single week, then he's not really a defensive coordinator, then is he?
Yeah, I think it reached the point where Boyer kept doing the same things and refused to adapt whatsoever. And McDaniel had full faith in Boyer and what he's doing. But at some point, I think he needed to intervene and say, we've got to do something different to mesh this personality. Now, you can't be Brian Flores and get into the minutia of everything and not trust anyone to do their job to the slightest degree. But someone had to get in there and tell Boyer, this shit's not working. And it just never seemed like that conversation was coming or was going to happen. And I'm really not sure what the sense is with Boyer of how safe he is, because fans and media and so forth can harp all day long about what they think should happen with Boyer, about if it was injuries that caused this. And so if he runs his scheme with his guys, it'll be different results. Or if there's that same frustration inside the building that he needed to adapt and didn't. And if you have someone who's just a caveman out there running the same scheme saying, hey, do it. I don't care how square this peg is. It's going to fit. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't have an answer to how he's viewed within that building and what we're going to see there.
All right, so the next thing, because here's something from a Fin Addict 44. I think that's an Umbreon in your profile pic, by the way. I appreciate the Pokemon there. Do you guys think that Miami chose to not play Tua even when he was healthy because of health concerns or criticism? The answer to that, Fin Addict, is no. The simple fact of the matter is they wanted Tua to play, and we talked about this earlier in the show. They wanted Tua to play. The NFL basically told them, go kick rocks. You're not letting him play. And so that was the end of the discussion. The NFL steps in and says, he's not clearing the protocol. We won't clear him. Then that's it. There's no more. So And again, that's where we start to talk about, well, it's obvious that the NFL does not want Tua playing right now. Maybe next year they'll look at it, and you're right, the narrative is going to be pretty darn awful regarding the whole thing. They're going to look at Tua as if he is this paper mache doll that desperately needs to be protected. And I think that's a load of crap because other guys have gotten concussed and they just move on with their lives. Kenny Pickett, again, the most obvious example, that he got concussed. He went through the protocol. Nobody even bats an eyelash. The thing about the Tua thing was that everybody believed, and depending on who you ask, he has 3 concussions, not 2. And I think that that's the overarching narrative. In spite of the fact that there was an independent investigation done into whether Tua was concussed or not, in spite of the fact that all the doctors cleared him, the independent evaluator cleared him, everybody cleared him and said that he was just fine, everybody believes from head to toe that Tua got concussed in Buffalo and he was allowed to play anyway. So that is where the big issue is, because they are saying that Tua either Tua needs protection from himself or that Tua needs protection from everybody else. And to make that ridiculous argument is possibly one of the most frustrating things that I feel like I'm going to have to deal with. I'm glad Adam Schefter came out and tweeted out a story that they expect Tua back next season, because frankly, I did not, part of me was wondering, should Tua retire? And I briefly had those thoughts, but I don't think Tua wants to stop. His little brother Talia came out and said, no, I don't think Tua is going to stop. I'm sure his parents are like, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm sure Tua is probably going to say yes. They're not going to step in and say, we're going to protect you from yourself. And we're going to tell you can't go. And even if they tried that, would Tua really give up his whole career because mommy said so? I don't think so. So Tua was going to be back. McDaniel's going to be back. And I'm 100% okay with that. Okay? Because think about it. Even if you believe that Tua is injury prone, even if you believe he's going to miss 3 or 4 games next season, which I do not have that, by the way. I do not have that guarantee in my crystal ball that says he's going to be out. Okay? Anything can happen at any given moment. So with that in mind, I am interested to see what this offense looks like with Tua actually having a year of experience under his belt with this offense, that he was able to become MVP caliber for a few weeks. Because, again, this is something I asked you a few weeks ago. Do we just dismiss everything that we saw in those middle weeks and say, oh, it didn't really happen? I can't. We were literally chanting, Tua is MVP. Tua is elite. Tua is amazing. You can't get rid of that stuff. You just can't. Like, guys like that, even if it's a fluke, even guys like Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins had their moment, but it was always up and down. Mm-hmm. Tua had weeks upon weeks upon weeks of elite level football. The other teams caught up to it, and Tua got a little big on his britches and started trying to do things he shouldn't have done. He can calm down with that. And I feel like at this point, next year, with McDaniel having learned how to a little bit more about how to be a head coach, he's got a little seasoning on him. He's a little tenderized now. He's starting to learn what it means to be a head coach. With Tua coming back, he doesn't have to worry about, it's a new offensive play scheme. It's a new play caller. It's a brand new coaching everything, because that's what he's been having. Remember, ever since Tua got to Miami, it's been different offensive coordinators, different offensive play callers, different offensive everything. So I have very little reason to believe that next year I can't be optimistic. I really can't.
Yeah, and that's what the debate was going into this year. Is it a Tua problem, or is it everything around Tua that's the problem? Because as we've discussed earlier, it was an absolute zoo in Miami of who was calling that offense. The first 2 years Tua was in the league. Last year, 5 of the worst graded pass blockers in the NFL were Miami Dolphins. Of course, they go and get Terran Armstead. They get Connor Williams. Robert Hunt, can't be said enough, took a big step this year. And then, of course, you add that whole Tyreek Hill guy. So now you got to see what that looks like. You got to see when that offense was clicking, was as good as any offense in the entire league.
You couldn't stop them.
No.
You couldn't.
And there are still some growing spots for Tua within the offense. He's going to be more comfortable with the full receiver set after yet another offseason. But if Tua is able to also just take what he's given, which, let's be honest, part of that felt like it was proving the narrative wrong when he refused to go underneath to tight ends and Ingold and the backs and so forth because of all the check down talk and the arm strength talk. At least subconsciously that was there. But with Tua being selective about taking his shots, he's proven he can do it. But being selective about taking your shots, the offense is going to has a chance to be even more special next year, so long as, again, Tua. I heard numerous people say Tua needs to learn how to fall. That it's former NFL quarterbacks saying he's not falling correctly, and
I buy it.
And I don't think it's an equipment issue, and I do think that the Packers' concussion was exacerbated by the prior concussion against the Bengals, because when it happens in quick succession like that, you are more vulnerable and so forth. So having this offseason should be good for Tua, and we can determine whether it's fluky or if he's more prone or what have you. But be focused on keeping himself better protected when he's out there. So I don't know how you cannot be optimistic, because again, coming into this year, who was the big pass rusher that you were banking on anchoring your defensive line? Emmanuel Ogbah, not out there. And you're going to, in all likelihood, clear that Byron Jones contract. And you'll have to figure something out there. But at least you'll have an opportunity to upgrade so that you don't have, and I'm a big fan of KK. He played really well this year, but you don't have an undrafted rookie starting at the other corner spot, and you don't have Keon Crossan, for God's sake, at that other cornerback spot as well. So you get Needham back. Brandon Jones is huge for that defense. Getting him back will be big. So you have to feel optimistic on both sides of the ball going into next year. I really don't understand how you can't. The Dolphins really, what they've done with this roster compared to the 2019 season is just unbelievable. This is absolutely a team to be reckoned with, not just next year, but moving forward. The biggest question for me in the offseason, other than some smaller scale, who are you going to put there, especially in the cornerback spot, but not as much maneuvering as in years past because of the salary cap situation, because of the lack of draft picks. But my question is, what do you do with the Tua contract? What do you do with that extension? I don't know if I have an answer for that at this point.
It's going to be hard to decide, because you have to decide whether or not you're going to do his fifth year option pretty darn soon. Like, you have to choose whether it's going to happen or not. And if you do, you are on the hook for that money. So with that being said, again, all we're basing this off of is, will Tua be healthy? Because as far as we're acting like his performance, I can't say that he doesn't deserve it. He's played elite level football. So he deserves to be looked at as a potentially elite quarterback. And some people were arguing, even if for whatever reason, I don't agree with this take, but if for whatever reason you decided you wanted to just rent Tom Brady for 1 year and trade Tua, that some people were arguing that you would not be able to get a first round pick for him. Are you kidding? You got a first round pick for Sam Bradford. And Sam Bradford was known straight up for being injured all the time. Like, everything was hurt on Sam Bradford.
Hollywood Brown got a first-round pick last year.
And you're telling me that Tua Tagovailoa wouldn't get a first-round pick if we traded him? And again, I am not advocating for that. Tua needs to stay put. But there are people honestly saying that Tua would not get a first-round pick. Why? What about him, aside from the concussion? The only thing you could possibly maybe argue is that he's a bad PR thing, because you don't want to be the team that puts him out there and he gets hurt. No, I'm sorry. It's not gonna happen. So, $20 million. Now let's wrap up with this, Michael. After signing all the futures contracts, Miami's going to be about $20 million over the cap. There's going to be some fat trimming. So obviously we have some choices to make. Mike Gesicki, for one, he's done. He does not fit this offense. I'm sorry. He just doesn't. And even though I fight like the last week of the season, I bet on him with my prize picks, and he's just as soon as I put money on him, he did not do what I needed him to do. So of course not. That's besides the point.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing is obviously he's gone. He's no longer a thing. Honestly, Emmanuel Ogbah, I don't see the need to keep him because Jalen Phillips is absolutely a rock star, and we're already paying a lot of money to Bradley Chubb. So, and frankly, Bradley Chubb offers more than Ogbah anyway. You have to extend Christian Wilkins, and you can maneuver his contract so that way he doesn't hurt as much the first year. I'm good with that. The next thing that I would do is if we don't trust Kader Kohou, which I'm very close to saying, you know what, I trust Kader Kohou, I'm going to try to restructure Byron Jones's contract. Seriously. Or not, when I say restructure, I don't mean restructure as in give him more guaranteed money. I'm restructuring in the sense of you have a choice, Mr. Jones. You can stay here and take a pay cut with us and we'll give you less money. Or you can test the free agent market and explain to other teams, why did you sit out the whole year? That's Byron Jones's option right now. So if I'm Byron Jones, I look at it this way and say, you know what, maybe I should take a pay cut, do a 1-year tryout, and show everybody that I can still play and try to chase the money next year. So that's what I would do with Byron Jones. I would give him that option first because if he gets healthy, he can still play. Even if he's not like superstar Byron Jones, we saw with Xavier Howard that even though he wasn't healthy and even though he's having a down year, he still knows what he's doing. He does. He really does. So I'm not willing to get rid of Xavier Howard yet. There are other guys that we can look at. Let's see. Who else can we look at as far as like trimming the fat? Eric Rowe won't be there anymore. We can look towards like guys like Elijah Mitchell, Verone McKinley for that kind of a role. Maybe do we look at Jerome Baker? Can we move on without him? Can we draft somebody else? Can Channing Tindall step up now and do something with that? Can we potentially move on from Cedric Wilson because he seems to be redundant in this offense? Can Eric Ezukanma finally step up and end up being in this offense? We'll see. There's places to save money. There is. And it's not nearly as bad as everyone is making it out to be. But there will be some fat trimming. And I'm okay with that. Gethsemane's asking Sanders as in Jason Sanders. I'm assuming that's what you're saying anyway. So Jason Sanders, I'm on the fence with him right now, Michael. I really am. I'm not sure what to do with him at this point. Because he seemed to he stepped up today.
And
last week. So I'm not sure what to do with him right now. Coming from the truth, Miami owner needs to move fast, go get Sean Payton and dump McD. Love his personality, but he needs seasoning. Yeah, let him season here. Because if you let him get seasoning elsewhere, you're not going to get him back. You will never get him back. And I am not willing to. And like Sean Payton already left the NFL once. I'm not convinced he's going to just stick around forever now. That's number one. Number two, I don't even know if he wants to come to Miami. Because if he wants to come to Miami, he's probably going to want another quarterback. And if he wants another quarterback, we're going to have to start all over again. And we're going to have to start the offensive scheme all over again. And we're going to have to start everything all over again. We're basically rebuilding all over again. And I don't want to do that. Because Doug Peterson came in and said, I like Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to work with Trevor Lawrence. Sean Payton's going to come in here and say, I didn't like Tua to begin with. You made me admit that I was wrong with Tua. I didn't appreciate that. I'm going to dump Tua and get a new quarterback and start over. No. And I keep saying, here comes the whole thing. Tom Brady sits Tua. I'm going to say this very clearly for everybody, and you all better listen up. If Tom Brady shows up in Miami and Tua has to back him up, Tua will never play for Miami again. Ever. You understand? He will not. He will be the good little soldier boy during the season. He'll come in and play, and then he will tell his agent, get me out of here. Because there's only so much disrespect you can take. Seriously. Some other team, maybe New Orleans, is going to come in here and say, come here, boy, I can work with you. And they're going to do something with Tua. I really believe that. I do not want to give up on the next Drew Brees because we were too impatient again.
Miami's been looking for a head coach since Jimmy Johnson retired. And if you don't even have to give Jimmy Johnson, since Don Shula was essentially shown the door.
I would give Tony Sperano a little bit of love. He was a good coach. He just couldn't get this quarterback situation panned out.
That's true. You're looking for long-term solutions. This was the most stable franchise in the NFL for 30 years in terms of quarterback play and coaching. And it's been an absolute turnstile since then. And you have a rookie head coach who leads you to the playoffs despite a slew of injuries and takes you to the brink of the game with the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. And I cannot be convinced that if a couple injuries this year did not happen in the enormous amount of injuries that happened, that this isn't a demonstrably different season. One, where you're seated. Two, where you're going. You may even be playing the first round in Miami, the way that the Dolphins were playing until some of those injuries happened. But nonetheless, he takes you to the playoffs in the first year, and you have a quarterback who leads the league in QBR, who's setting the world on fire, and as you said, was getting MVP chance, was getting MVP talk, and justifiably so. You take out the West Coast road trip, my God, but the rest of the year was really fantastic. And you want to run off both of them because they're not meeting the standard that we've seen? Have we forgot about Cam Cameron? Have we forgotten about Cleo Lemon?
Adam Gase. Talk about fool's gold.
You have a good young coach and you have a good young quarterback. That people talk about, you see it all the time on social media and so forth, when Dolphin fans get annoyed with the Dolphins, say, this franchise is a joke. Everyone's laughing at us. We're a bunch of clowns. This is a joke. The NFL will absolutely laugh at and point at the Dolphins if they move on from McDaniel after a year, and Tua after what we just saw. Not for the health reasons, but for on-field play of trying to upgrade in that by going and getting 47-year-old Tom Brady for a year, because it'd be getting Tom Brady. It would be a year. That's not fixing your quarterback situation. That's taking a scratch-off ticket. That's not fixing. That's throwing away the future at that position.
And by the way, Tom Brady's starting to look a little old. Like, he finally is starting to look old. Do you really want Tom Brady on his last fumes and assume that he's going to be the guy who leads you to the promised land? Stolte says Jimmy G would be a good fit. Yes, he would. He would, except for one thing. If he's going to be a backup, I'm fine with that. But he's not starting over Tua. No, sir. And by the way, we actually have a bet going on with the Pulse of Fins Nations guys, Michael. Basically, the bet right now is that Garoppolo is going to get signed for like 3 years, $20 million per year or something like that. I'm not convinced of that, but I'm sure Garoppolo will have his suitors. But yeah, we will see what that happens. I personally feel like that if I was Garoppolo, I wouldn't mind coming to Miami and be reunited with Mike McDaniel. I mean, I had a pretty good season with Mike McDaniel. So that's what I'm thinking.
There are opportunities. I mean, Teddy's obviously.
Teddy wants out. He's done. He doesn't want to play anymore.
Feelings mutual. And there, you will be able to find a high-value backup to come to Miami because of the concussion issues with Tua. That I don't think that that's going to be a hard sell to a guy with multiple options. Now, who that will be remains to be seen, but Miami will get a high-caliber backup this offseason.
Some people are saying Baker Mayfield. Some people are saying Sam Darnold. I don't know. Like, I blew at Baker Mayfield during a show a few weeks ago, and I don't know. I just don't like Baker. Maybe from just a personal standpoint, but I don't like Baker. I just don't. Sorry.
This isn't going to be another oh crap sort of backup situation next year, because you're telling someone, hey, you can come play for Mike McDaniel, you can come live in Miami, not half bad, and you can have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and the potential to play, because look how often the backups played last year. So Miami will get a high value backup. It just remains to be seen who that's going to be.
All righty. So anything else we want to talk about before we call it a show? This is the last final yard. So for speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah. This is last post game for what's it going to be, 7+ more months. That part hasn't sank in for me yet. I tell my wife every year during football season when we get to the playoffs how excited I am for football, but then the math starts going in my head of, oh God, we have 3 games left, or we have 7 games left, and so forth. And I have not processed that this is the last Dolphins game, and it's really strange to explain my emotions throughout this day because I had 0 expectations whatsoever. I was very pleased that Ethan did not go into what the score predictions were going to be, because I would have shown my full backside if that had happened. But I'm not a moral victory guy. I hate moral victories in that regard, but I am encouraged. It was a lot better than I anticipated it being. And if you told me this was going to be a 3-point game, I would not have believed that whatsoever going into the game. So,
can I interject real quick? Breaking news, kind of, sort of. According to a tweet sent out by Adam Beasley, Mike McDaniel said during the post-game press conference, part of the reason the 4th and 1 play was late is because the Dolphins were first told that they had a first down, and when the refs notified them that it was 4th down, they had the wrong personnel.
By the way, something we haven't talked about, and I know it gets into the excuses as well, but that second down play to Jalen Waddle was an absolutely horrendous spot. That should have been 3rd and 1, and they give it a full 3rd and 2, and then you run it to, 4th and inches. That could have been a conversion. Just the spots today were just horrendous.
We already talked about that, Michael. The refs wanted Miami out. They really did. It's like, get out.
Tagovailoa was saying these spots would they couldn't believe the spots in this game, and that was a very, very important spot when you get into it of what that would have meant. That was a game-changing spot right there. And, obviously it was a mess thereafter, and you would have liked to have a timeout at that spot. That sure would have been nice. But
yeah, I'm not taking away blame from McDaniel for the rest of the game, but it's like, if he's being told one thing and it's actually another, then I have to take a little bit of the heat off of him, because it's like, well, I'm calling a play assuming one thing and instead of another. So again, that being said, he still needs to get the play call in faster. He can't be worrying about changing personnel that late into it. There's some game awareness there, but if you feel like you're being screwed, you feel like you're being screwed. I don't know what to tell you, but anyway, it is what it is. Next season, I feel like the future is bright. I really believe that Tua is going to come back. I don't have any reason to believe he won't, to be honest. McDaniel's going to be back. We will see who else comes back, because there's a lot of good pieces on this team. And I feel like we don't need to do a whole full rebuild type thing like all over again. We really don't. So with all that being said, thank you everybody for joining us, of all fans. I see Jets fans in here making fun of us. That's okay. I don't mind. You guys had your moment as well. So enjoy Zach Wilson for another season. Next thing we're going to talk about, thank you 49ers fans, whoever fans else are in here, and Darth Gajia 80, thanks guys for the year. Listen, hey, you guys make it all worth it, because I have lots of guys in here that Explosive Valkyrie Live, thank you. Fins up, yes, absolutely. Let's go ahead and we will conclude this show by once again mentioning that if you want to get in some wins here, go ahead and head over to prizepicks.com, which is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can pick up to 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 different players across professional sports leagues. You can choose the over or the under on their fantasy point projections, on their stat projections, all sorts of types of projections. Just use the promo code 5, that is FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up using that promo code. Again, the promo code is 5 FIVE. Go sign up, use that code, put in $100. They'll give you an extra $100. So you basically have $200 to play with to get in some big wins. All right. So with all that said and done, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. Really sad we couldn't have Eric in here because he's having technical difficulties. Manny, as always, thank you so much for being our producer throughout the entire season. We couldn't have done any of this without you, and you don't get nearly as much recognition as you deserve. So thank you so much once again. And with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you all next year on the final yard as the Miami Dolphins return to go do whatever it is that we're going to be doing. All right. Good night, everybody.